A bus driver's daughter will always be low class. That was what her husband's family said at her father's funeral, a moment when she wanted nothing but peace. They mocked her, belittled her father's job, and claimed she was lucky to marry into their family. But their downfall began when the lawyer arrived with her father's final message. The will was played for everyone, exposing a truth they never saw coming. Sometimes the contempt of others becomes the stage where justice finally rises. Please like, subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from to support the channel. Kalaya Maseko stood beside her father's coffin and tried to steady her breathing. She was known for her patience and quiet strength, qualities that helped her restore delicate paintings for a living. But they did little to ease the heaviness in her chest. Her father had always told her that grief came in waves. Now those waves pressed against her ribs as she adjusted a single white lily that had begun to droop. She wanted everything around him to look peaceful. It was the last thing she could give him. Behind her, the funeral home was still empty. The service had not yet begun. The silence should have comforted her, yet it felt strained, as if someone had disturbed the air. That someone was her husband, Evander Thorne. He sat in the front row with an iPad balanced on his knee. His fingers tapped in a constant rhythm as he typed numbers into a spreadsheet. He did not glance at the coffin. He did not acknowledge the framed photo of her father smiling in his bus driver uniform. Instead, he muttered to himself, displeased. "It makes no sense to spend this much on oak," he said, more to his screen than to her. "Your father would not have cared. This is wasteful." Kalia closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered when Evander's confidence had once felt inspiring. Now it wrapped around him like cheap perfume, strong enough to hide something rotten beneath. Before she could respond, a sharp click of heels echoed across the room. Beatrice Thorne entered with the posture of a queen assessing her servants. She was Evander's mother, and she had always treated Kalia as if she were an inconvenience rather than family. Beatrice did not offer sympathy. She scanned Kalia from head to toe, her lips curling slightly. "You chose an unfortunate outfit for today," Beatrice said. "You look plain. At least wear something that reflects our family's standing." Kalia instinctively touched the black dress she had chosen. It was simple and respectful, exactly what she felt was right for her father. Still, the comments stung. Beatrice stepped closer and held out a thick envelope. "You need to sign the authorization to sell your father's old house. It will help pay off your husband's financial obligations. We can finalize it after the burial." Kalia stared at the envelope. She understood what Beatrice meant. Evander had been drowning in debt for months, though he pretended otherwise. Now his mother wanted to use her father's home, the only place filled with memories of warmth, to settle his liabilities. "Not today," Kalia said quietly. Beatrice narrowed her eyes. "You married into this family. His debts are your debts. Stop delaying." Evander glanced up from his screen with irritation. "It is only paperwork, Kalia. You know we need the equity. Your father's place is not worth much anyway. This is not the time to be emotional." Not the time. He had said it without looking at her father's face even once. A tight ache rose in her throat. For years she had convinced herself that Evander loved her in his own flawed way. She tried to believe that his pride and need for control came from pressure, not cruelty. But now, with her father lying cold before her, she saw him clearly. He cared more about debts than dignity, more about appearances than her pain. Beatrice pushed the envelope into Kalia's hands. "Sign it. We will proceed after the service." The paper slipped from Kalia's fingers and fell to the floor. She did not bend to pick it up. Instead, she lifted her chin, and her voice, though soft, cut through the room. "Today is my father's day, not yours, not his debts, not your demands." The tapping of Evander's tablet stopped. Beatrice froze, stunned that Kalia had dared to speak with defiance. For the first time, a stillness settled over the room that did not feel like grief. It felt like a warning, as if something inside Kalia had finally awakened. Evander opened his mouth, but no words came out. Beatrice stepped back, offended. The tension thickened until the funeral director peeked through the doorway, startled by the silence. The service had not even begun, yet the first crack in their marriage had already appeared, sharp enough to split the air. And Kalia felt it. Something in her life had shifted and there was no turning back. The reception hall filled slowly after the burial, and Kalia walked in with a quiet heaviness in her steps. She had hoped for a moment of calm, something that would let her breathe after the rawness of the graveside farewell. Instead, she was met with voices that rose too loudly for a room meant to honor the dead. The chandeliers cast a warm glow, but it only made the scene feel more uncomfortable. People who barely knew her father laughed while balancing glasses of wine that Evander had ordered without asking her. She took a seat near the edge of the room, wanting to stay close to the small group of her father's friends. They were bus drivers, janitors, and mechanics who had come straight from their shifts. Their uniforms still smelled of work and rain, and she felt comforted by their presence. They cared about her father in a way that felt real. Across the hall, the Thorne family occupied the center table as if they were hosting a gala. They raised their glasses, discussing business contacts and investment rumors. Evander had changed into a fresh suit and seemed energized, not grieving. Every time he lifted his glass, the servers hurried to refill it. Beatrice leaned back in her chair with a proud expression. She addressed the people around her with the confidence of someone convinced of her superiority. Kalia tried to ignore them, but their voices carried too easily. "I suppose this is acceptable for a repast," Beatrice said. "Given the circumstances, it is the best we can expect." Evander stood up and tapped his fork lightly against his glass. The sound rang sharply through the room. The laughter quieted as everyone turned toward him. Kalia felt her stomach tighten. She did not want him speaking. Not today. "Thank you all for coming," Evander began, placing one hand casually inside his pocket. "My father-in-law lived a simple life. He drove the same bus route for decades. He used to bring home the same lunch every day, a sandwich and a bag of chips." A few soft chuckles rose from the Thorne side. He smirked as if he had delivered a clever line. "He worked hard, and I guess that is what matters." Kalia felt her face warm with embarrassment. Her father deserved better than this shallow performance. Evander continued, now waving his glass around as if telling a story at a dinner party. "And Kalia is very lucky. She escaped that life thanks to our marriage." The laughter grew louder. The bus drivers at Kalia's table lowered their heads, trying not to show how uncomfortable they felt. Kalia clenched her hands beneath the table. She wished she could stand up and stop him, but her voice felt trapped in her chest. The doors to the hall suddenly opened, and a man entered with hesitant steps. He looked out of place. He wore an outdated suit, and his hair was windswept as if he had rushed to get here. He held a worn briefcase that seemed older than he was. Evander frowned. "Excuse me, I think you are in the wrong place. This is a private gathering." The man glanced at him with no fear. His eyes were calm but serious. "I am exactly where I need to be." Kalia watched him closely. Something about him felt familiar, although she could not place why. He stepped further inside and cleared his throat. "My name is Silas Grant. I was a close friend of Mr. Masiko. We met on his daily routes and stayed friends for many years. I am also the executor of his will." A quiet ripple moved through the room. Kalia felt her breath catch. She had expected the will to be handled privately at a later date. Why was he saying this here? Silas opened his briefcase. "Mr. Maseko left very clear instructions. The will must be read today, in front of everyone present." Vander let out a frustrated laugh. "This is ridiculous. We are not doing this in a banquet hall." Silas looked him straight in the eye. "You do not have a choice. This was his final request." Kalia felt a sudden shift in the air. It was subtle but unmistakable. Her father had planned something, and whatever it would change everything. The room fell into an uneasy silence as Silas Grant moved toward the front of the hall. The older man placed his worn briefcase on the table and lifted out a small projector. The guests shifted in their seats, confused and impatient. Kalia watched each movement closely. She had met her father's friends before, but she had never heard of Silas. Still, something about the calm focus in his eyes told her that he truly cared about her father. Evander stepped forward with a forced laugh. "We do not need a show. Just read whatever paperwork you have." Silas ignored him and connected the projector to a screen that staff members quickly set up. When he turned to speak, his voice carried enough certainty to silence even the loudest whispers. "Mr. Maseko recorded a message for this moment. He wanted everyone here to hear it. Nothing is to be read before the video finishes." Beatrice crossed her arms. This is highly inappropriate. Silas faced her without hesitation. These were his instructions. I intend to follow them exactly. Kalia felt her palms grow warm. She had prepared herself for a traditional reading of assets and legal terms. She had not expected a final message from her father. Her throat tightened at the thought of hearing his voice again. Silas pressed a button, and the projector flickered to life. The screen filled with an image of her father sitting in his bus driver uniform. The familiar patch on his shoulder looked faded, yet he appeared more confident than she had ever seen him. His eyes were gentle but sharp, and his smile carried a mix of affection and seriousness. "Hello, Kalia," he began. The sound of his voice hit her with such force that she gripped the edge of her chair. "If you are watching this, it means I have left the world behind. Do not be sad for me. I lived a long, honest life. I only regret that I did not protect you better." Kalia blinked rapidly, fighting the sting of tears. She sensed something heavy coming. Her father continued, "Before I talk about what I leave behind, I need to speak about what has been taken from you." The room shifted. Guests leaned forward. The Thorne family stiffened. "I have watched how my daughter has been treated. I have seen the disrespect disguised as advice. I have seen the manipulation disguised as love. And I have seen the financial games played behind her back." Evander's expression changed instantly. His jaw tightened. A bead of sweat formed at his temple. Her father clasped his hands together on the screen. "Evander Thorne, you thought I did not know. You assumed a bus driver had no way of understanding company loans and hidden liabilities. You were wrong." A murmur rippled through the hall. "You secretly used your family's business accounts to cover personal gambling debts. You pledged company assets as collateral without telling your mother. You believed you were untouchable because no one would ever think to check." Evander took a step back, his face turning pale. "This is absurd." Silas paused the video long enough to say, "You will have your chance to respond after it finishes." He restarted the recording. "I was approached by one of your lenders when the company fell behind on payments. He recognized me from the bus route. He trusted me more than he trusted you. I bought the debt quietly. Every last piece." Gasps filled the hall. Even Kalia's father's friends exchanged shocked looks. Her father leaned closer to the camera. "I did it to understand the people my daughter married into, and now I understand everything." Beatrice slammed her hand against the table. "He had no right." Kalia's heart pounded. She had never imagined her father knew this much. She felt a strange blend of pride and fear rising within her. The video continued. "Beatrice, your taste for luxury pushed you to take loans you could not repay. You hid them from your son and blamed the economy. Those debts no longer belong to the bank. They belong to me." The hall erupted into whispers. Beatrice trembled with anger. Her father gave one final message before the video faded to black. "Kalia, remember this. People reveal who they are when they think no one is watching. I watched, and now the truth belongs to you." When the screen went dark, no one spoke. The silence was heavier than grief. It was the weight of truth settling into every corner of the room. Kalia sat frozen, her pulse racing. She had come today to bury her father. Instead, he had handed her the key to everything she never knew. Silas closed the projector slowly. "The will continues. We are not finished." The murmurs in the hall had begun to rise again when Silas lifted a hand, asking for quiet. His calm expression remained unchanged, but Kalia sensed that the most difficult part had yet to come. She sat with her hands placed neatly in her lap, though her fingers trembled slightly. Hearing her father's voice had shaken something deep within her, and now every breath felt heavier. Silas opened a thick folder and adjusted his glasses. "We will now proceed with the formal reading of Mr. Masiko's will." Evander stepped forward quickly. His voice sounded strained but desperate. "There is no need to perform for the crowd. We can continue this later in a private setting." Silas did not acknowledge him. "Mr. Maseko left behind an estate valued at $68 million. The assets include several properties, multiple investment portfolios, and liquid funds." The hall erupted in gasps. Some guests pressed their hands to their mouths. Others stared at Kalia as though seeing her for the first time. Kalia's heart thudded painfully. She had known her father worked hard all his life, but she had never imagined he held a fortune of this size. It seemed impossible. Yet the unwavering tone in Silas's voice left no room for doubt. Evander blinked rapidly. 68 million? That is impossible. He drove a bus. Silas continued speaking. Every asset is legally accounted for. Mr. Maseko was an exceptional investor. His modest lifestyle allowed him to build wealth quietly. Beatrice staggered back as if she needed a chair to steady herself. Her voice rose in disbelief. How could a man like him hide this? Why would he not offer support to our family when we faced hardship? Kalia flinched at the word hardship. She remembered her father patching his shoes instead of buying new ones, all while she believed he struggled like every other driver. Now the truth painted a different picture. He had been building something for her, not for those who mocked him. Silas turned a page. The estate is left entirely to his daughter, Kalia Masiko, with one condition that must be met immediately. The silence snapped into place. Even the clinking glasses stopped. Evander swallowed hard. What condition? Silas raised his eyes toward Kalia with a look of sympathy. Mr. Masiko stated that his greatest fear was leaving his daughter trapped in a life that diminished her spirit. He left explicit instructions. His daughter may inherit the entire estate only if she ends her marriage to Evander Thorne without granting him any share of her assets. The room froze. Kalia felt as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She stared at Silas, trying to understand the words. Divorce. Her father wanted her to leave her husband as the price of her inheritance. Evander immediately reached for her. Kalia, listen to me. This is manipulation. Your father did not understand how marriage works. You cannot let a man who is not here dictate your choices. His voice softened as he knelt beside her chair. He grabbed her hands tightly, forcing her to look at him. You need me. You always have. You do not know how to manage money. You said that yourself. I can help you. I can protect you. The warmth in his tone might have convinced her once, but now the words felt like chains disguised as comfort. Silas spoke again, his voice firm. There is more. Mr. Masiko hired a private investigator. He discovered proof that Evander Thorne has been involved in an extramarital relationship for several months. He planned to file for divorce and claim a portion of your father's home as soon as possible. Kalia's breath caught. She pulled her hands away from Evander's grip. Her chest felt tight, full of betrayal she had never expected to face at her father's funeral. Evander's face twisted into anger. This is nonsense. Someone is lying to you. Silas placed a small folder on the table. All evidence is inside. Photos, messages, receipts. Beatrice's voice cracked. Evander, tell them this is false. Evander opened his mouth but said nothing. Kalia stared at him, the truth settling slowly. She thought she would break. Instead, something inside her grew still. She finally understood the weight her father carried in his final days. He had seen everything she tried to ignore. He had given her a choice, and now she needed to decide who she wanted to be. Silas closed the folder gently. The decision is yours, Miss Masako. Kalia inhaled deeply. The air tasted different now, sharp with clarity. Her father had not left her a burden. He had left her freedom. Whether she took it was up to her. For a long moment, Kalia remained still. The hall felt too bright, too crowded, and too loud even in its silence. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, steady and warm, reminding her of the person he believed she could become. She lifted her eyes slowly and looked around the room. Every face carried tension. Every breath felt suspended. Evander watched her closely. His expression shifted between fear and anger, as if he could not decide which mask to wear. He stood and reached for her again, his voice low and urgent. Kalia, do not make a mistake you cannot undo. You love me. You always have. She rose from her chair with calm movements. Her legs felt surprisingly steady. She looked directly at him, and he froze as if he sensed something had changed. I love the man I thought you were, she said. That man is gone. Evander clenched his jaw. You are letting a video manipulate you. Kalia shook her head once. I am letting the truth guide me. Her father's friends watched her with quiet respect. To them, she was still the gentle daughter of their old colleague. But now she appeared different, stronger, clearer. The weight of her grief began to shift into something new, something that took shape inside her like a steady flame. Silas stepped beside her and placed a document on the table. His expression held no triumph, only understanding. "This is the petition for dissolution of marriage. Your father asked me to prepare it in advance." Kalia looked at the papers. The edges were crisp. The ink had dried long before this day came. Her father had known she would reach this moment. He had trusted her more than she trusted herself. Evander laughed sharply, unable to hide his panic. "You need me, Kalia. You cannot pretend otherwise. You do not know how complicated these decisions will be once you accept the inheritance. You will fall apart without me." His words once comforted her. Today they disgusted her. She exhaled slowly. "You have no place in my future." She picked up the pen. Her fingers trembled only for a second before she regained her composure. The hall quieted as she signed her name with a firm stroke. Her life split cleanly between the woman she had been and the woman she was choosing to become. When she finished, she pushed the papers toward Silas and stepped back. An unexpected calm washed over her. It was not joy. It was not relief. It was clarity. Beatrice lunged toward the table. "This is ridiculous. She cannot do this. That marriage is valid. Those assets belong to the family." Before she could touch the documents, two men in dark suits appeared at the entrance. They were the same individuals who had quietly lingered near the back of the room earlier. Silas addressed Kalia gently. "These men are part of the security team your father hired in the last months of his life. They are here to protect you during the transition of the estate." Kalia nodded. She had not expected this level of foresight, but she felt grateful for it. Beatrice pointed angrily at the guards. "You have no right to interfere." Silas answered calmly. "They do. The penthouse, the vehicles, and the related assets were transferred to a holding company 5 years ago. That company was owned by Mr. Maseko. He instructed that the property be vacated within 24 hours upon the execution of his will." Beatrice staggered, her confidence collapsing. "He let us live there without telling us?" Kalia looked at her without hostility, only clarity. "You treated him as if he had nothing. You never cared to ask who he was." Evander stepped forward again, desperation rising. "Kalia, please. We can fix this. I can change." She met his gaze. "You already showed me who you are." The guards approached him. He backed away, pleading. "Kalia, do not do this." She turned her face slightly, refusing to give him the emotional reaction he wanted. "Leave," she said softly. "Your place in my life ended the moment you chose deceit over respect." Evander stood frozen before the guards escorted him away from the hall. For the first time, Kalia did not feel like the quiet woman overshadowed by louder voices. She felt like someone stepping fully into her own path. Silas gathered the documents. "Your father would be proud." Kalia closed her eyes briefly. She believed him. Her life was no longer defined by what had been taken from her, but by what she was ready to become. A week passed after the funeral, and the world around Kalia seemed to settle into a quiet she had never known. Her days began early at the restoration studio where she worked. The faint scent of varnish and old canvas greeted her each morning. It felt grounding. It felt like hers. The chaos of the Thorne family belonged to another life, one she had finally stepped away from. The studio was small but filled with warm light from tall windows. Kalia stood before an aged oil painting of a woman in a blue dress. She held a thin brush between her fingers, steady and confident. Working on a damaged piece always calmed her. Every careful stroke reminded her that broken things could be repaired with patience and respect. As she leaned closer to examine a crack along the woman's cheek, her colleague, Mara Benton, entered the room. Mara was a soft-spoken woman who had joined the studio 2 years earlier. She respected Kalia greatly and had supported her quietly during the difficult days after the funeral. Mara wiped her hands on a cloth and approached with gentle hesitation. "There is a man outside asking for you." Kalia did not look up from the canvas. "Did he say his name?" Mara nodded slowly. "Evander." The brush slipped slightly in Kalia's hand before she regained control. For a moment she did not move. She simply closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. She had known this day might come, but she hoped he would stay away. "Where is he now?" Kalia asked. In the foyer, Mara whispered. He seems agitated. Kalia placed the brush carefully on the table and straightened her posture. She felt no fear, only a weariness she had carried for years without naming it. She walked toward the entrance, her footsteps soft against the wooden floor. Vander stood near the door with his hands clasped tightly. His clothes looked disheveled, and the confident shine that once followed him had faded completely. His eyes darted around the room as if he wanted to hide from his own reflection. When he saw her, he stepped forward quickly. Kalia, thank goodness, I have been trying to reach you. She kept a safe distance. There is nothing left to discuss. He shook his head urgently. You do not understand. My accounts have been frozen. The penthouse is gone. Our cars were repossessed. My mother is sick from the stress. I have been turned away from every job interview. They say they want no connection with my name. That is unfortunate, Kalia said evenly. Evander's voice cracked. Do not speak to me like a stranger. I am your husband. You were my husband, she replied, and you made choices that brought you here. He stepped closer, desperation rising. I made mistakes, but I can fix everything if you give me time. We can rebuild. I can support you again. Kalia looked at him fully for the first time. She no longer saw the man she had once admired. She saw someone who feared losing control more than losing her. I am not the one who needs support, she said. His jaw tightened. You do not mean that. Kalia walked to the nearby work table and picked up the brush she had left behind. Do you know what my father told me about driving a bus? She asked quietly. He said a good driver knows when to move forward and when to stop. You never learned that. Evander's expression collapsed. Please, I am begging you. She pointed toward the door. Leave, Evander. You no longer belong here. At her signal, the studio's security guard, Mr. Linton, approached. He was a retired officer who occasionally helped the studio maintain safety during exhibitions. He gave Kalia a small nod, waiting for her cue. Escort him out, she said gently. Evander stared at her in disbelief. You are choosing to throw me away. Kalia held the brush firmly, her voice calm. I am choosing myself. Mr. Linton guided Evander toward the door as the man pleaded one last time. When the door finally closed behind him, the room grew quiet again. Kalia returned to her painting. The crack along the woman's cheek captured her attention. She dipped the brush into a thin layer of pigment and began to restore it carefully, each stroke deliberate and sure. She felt the strength of her own resolve settling inside her like a steady hand guiding her forward. For the first time in years, she felt free. The auction hall buzzed with low murmurs as guests filtered in, most of them donors, collectors, and supporters of local labor charities. Kalia stood near the entrance, greeting attendees with a polite smile. She had chosen a simple navy dress and tied her hair back to keep the evening focused on the cause rather than herself. The event was created to honor her father and raise money for families of drivers, janitors, and other workers who often went unseen. Silas Grant arrived early, carrying a folder of documents. He approached her with a respectful nod. Your father would be proud. This is exactly the kind of evening he hoped you would create. Kalia felt her chest warm. I want people to remember the dignity of the life he lived. As they spoke, volunteers arranged items for auction. There were old bus route signs, a polished steering wheel from a retired city bus, and a collection of her father's handwritten notes and sketches from years of driving. Each item drew curious looks and tender smiles. A familiar figure arrived next. Mr. Dalton, a retired driver who had worked with her father for 20 years, walked toward her with slow but steady steps. He had always treated her like a niece. Your father saved my job once, he said as he placed a small donation into the box. I am glad the world gets to know the man he really was. Kalia thanked him softly, touched by the gesture. She hoped tonight would stay peaceful, but a part of her sensed trouble lingering at the edges. Her intuition was right. The doors opened sharply and Beatrice Thorne marched inside wearing a sequined jacket that clashed with the humility of the event. Her expression revealed nothing but determination. Gasps spread through the room as people recognized her from the recent scandal. Kalia's shoulders tensed. She took a deep breath and stepped forward calmly. Mrs. Thorne, you were not invited. Beatrice ignored the greeting. I am here to correct the lies being spread about my family. You have manipulated the public into believing we mistreated your father. You will stop this circus tonight." Silas stepped between them, his tone steady. "Mrs. Thorne, this is a charity event. Please leave before you cause a disturbance." She pushed past him. "You cannot silence me. My family has a reputation that took decades to build. I will not let some bus driver's daughter destroy it." Kalia's eyes did not waver. "My father earned every bit of respect he received. Your reputation fell apart because of your own choices." The guests watched with tense curiosity. Some whispered. Others pulled out their phones. Beatrice's face flushed with anger. "You think you can stand on some moral high ground? You have no idea how the world really works." Kalia lifted her chin slightly. "I know enough to recognize cruelty when I see it." Beatrice turned toward the crowd. "Let me tell you something. Her father interfered in matters that had nothing to do with him. He ruined our lives because he was jealous of our success." The accusation sparked a wave of murmurs, and Silas exchanged a brief glance with Kalia. She nodded once. Silas walked to the projector at the back of the room. "If Mrs. Thorne wishes to discuss the truth, we will show it." Beatrice froze. "What are you doing?" Silas activated the screen. A video appeared, captured from a tiny camera her father had hidden inside a model bus he kept by his hospital bed. The footage was grainy, but the voices were unmistakable. Beatrice spoke first in the recording. "If he dies soon, we can push Kalia to sell the house. Evander needs the money." Evander's voice joined hers. "She will sign anything if I pressure her. It will be easy." A collective gasp rose from the audience. Beatrice's face turned white. "This is taken out of context." Silas addressed the room. "This was recorded 3 days before Mr. Maseko passed away." Beatrice's legs weakened, and she grabbed a chair to steady herself. Her outrage dissolved into fear as guests whispered and stepped away from her. Kalia felt no triumph, only closure. "This is the truth you wanted to correct." Beatrice's lips trembled. She had no words left. As security escorted her out, the room shifted. People applauded not loudly but with steady appreciation. The applause was not for drama, it was for justice. Kalia breathed deeply, letting the weight of the moment settle. Her father's dignity had been restored in front of the world. Silas approached quietly. "You have carried this with grace." Kalia nodded. "Tonight is for him, and for everyone like him." For the first time, she felt her father's memory lighten the space around her, instead of burdening it. Morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the community center, casting warm streaks of gold across the polished floor. Kalia stood in front of a long table where the first members of the Maseko Foundation Board gathered. The board consisted of volunteers and professionals who had worked closely with drivers, custodians, and service workers across the city. Among them was Ms. Halden, a former school bus coordinator with gentle eyes and a firm voice. She had admired Mr. Maseko for years, and now looked at Kalia with quiet respect. Kalia clasped her hands in front of her, steady and calm. Her grief had softened into something clearer, almost purposeful. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "The foundation will focus on financial aid, legal assistance, and educational programs for workers like my father. No one should feel invisible for doing honest work." Ms. Halden nodded. "Your father helped more people than he ever admitted. This foundation will keep that legacy alive." Silas Grant sat nearby with a stack of legal papers prepared for signatures. He had supported her every step of the way since the reading of the will, guiding her through decisions without pressure. "Once these documents are signed, the foundation will become fully operational," he said. Kalia signed each page carefully. With every signature, she felt herself step further into the future her father had imagined. When the final page was complete, she exhaled slowly. "He would have wanted this." Silas offered a faint smile. "He trusted you with it for a reason." The board meeting concluded with warm handshakes and sincere gratitude. As the room emptied, Kalia lingered for a moment. She touched the edge of the table, grounding herself in the reality she had built. There was no rush, no pressure, no voice telling her what she could or could not handle. The silence felt gentle. After leaving the community center, she walked toward the bus terminal. The familiar sounds greeted her immediately. Engines hummed, Announcements echoed over the speakers. Drivers chatted during breaks. The world her father had moved through every day came alive again. She approached a bus painted with the number 44. It was the same route her father had driven for decades. The driver for the day, Mr. Jennings, stepped down when he saw her. He had worked with her father for many years and carried the same easy kindness. "Kalia, it is good to see you," he said. "Taking a ride today?" "Yes," she answered softly, "if that is all right." He gestured toward the steps. "It will always be all right. Your father would be happy to know you are here." Kalia climbed inside and found a seat halfway down the aisle. The bus smelled faintly of fabric cleaner and diesel, scents she associated with childhood mornings when her father would pick her up after his final route. She rested her hand on the cool metal of the seat frame. It felt like touching an old memory. The city moved outside the window as the bus pulled away from the station. She watched people hurry down sidewalks, unaware of her story or her past. She felt no need to be seen. Her father's lessons lived quietly inside her, stronger now than ever. A presence settled beside her, gentle and familiar. She turned and saw Silas take the seat next to hers. He held a small envelope in his hand. "Your father asked me to give this to you when everything was settled," he said. Kalia accepted the envelope with careful fingers. Inside was a handwritten letter. She unfolded it and read slowly. "My dear Kalia, you spent your life supporting others. It is time for you to support yourself. Do not let anyone control the direction of your journey. Take the wheel. Live with courage and kindness. I am always with you. Love, Dad." Her breath wavered, but she did not cry. Instead, she let the warmth of his words steady her. She looked out the window again, the city drifting by like a promise she was finally ready to meet. The bus continued down its route, carrying her forward, carrying her home. Thank you so much for listening to the story of Kalia. Her journey reminds us that dignity, courage, and truth can rise even in the darkest moments. I would love to hear your thoughts about what happened to her and how you felt while following her struggle and triumph. Do not hesitate to share your opinion in the comments. Your voice matters here. And if you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, subscribe, and support the channel so we can continue bringing powerful stories to life. Thank you again for being here and for spending your time with us.